Out of Romans 15, 1 through 3 today. I want to share a message that I shared the other day. We just stand for the reading of the Word. Father, I just praise you and I just thank you. I just pray that you just touch my lips, Father, that I can speak thy words, Father. That you just let me move out of the way and let the Holy Spirit just move upon me, Father. That this message bless those that can see it and hear it, Father. I pray that you give us the eyes. You open our eyes that we may see, Father, and open our ears that we may hear. Father, give us a voice that we may share what you have for us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I'm going to read out of Romans 15, 1 through 3. It says, we, them that are strong, ought to bear the infirmities of the weak, and not to please ourselves. Let every one of us please his neighbor, for he is his good to edification. For even Christ pleased not himself, but as it is written, the reproaches of them that reproached thee fell on me. Amen. Amen.
Amen.
And when we read that, reproach, of course, is disapproval or insult or shame. And basically, it's saying that Christ took our infirmities and took everything for us. And today I want to share, since it's Memorial Day weekend, I want to share a story that I shared a couple of years ago. And I hope it touches you as it did. I've been thinking about it for a few days, and I just really, the Lord has really been dealing with me some things about the church and about myself and our outreaches. But I'm gonna quote. It says, "True courage is having a perfectly clear sense of the profound peril or danger ahead, and the willingness to face it anyway." And that's a quote from President Obama back in 2014. And actually, this is Obama's speech before he awarded the Medal of Honor to Army Sergeant Kyle J. White on May 13, 2014. And the reason I want to touch base on this Memorial Day, but also is when we know the word I'm trying to say, but if we understand the conflict, or we understand the outcome of something, or what could happen, but we fight through that is the truth of what Christ did for us. He knew the pain, he knew what he had to do to sacrifice his life for our sins, or for our reproach, as we read in Romans. But going back to the story, the Medal of Honor is the nation's highest award of valor, above and beyond the call of duty in combat. Throughout history, there have only been a little over 3,400 awarded. It is the highest award for valor. So what is valor? Valor is defined as boldness, courage, especially in war. Originated of the word comes from value or worth. So I guess it's the worth or your value in a war. And you know, we were made worthy, as I said, through Christ, because Matthew 10:31 says, "Fear ye not, therefore ye are more valued than my sparrows." And so what he's saying is basically, God knows it sparrows, so he knows us. So our value is made through Christ. And before I get into all that, I want to share a little bit more of this story about Sergeant White. But if we could ever understand what Christ truly did for us, and I've said this many times, and I ministered on this last week about seeing ourselves and what people see in us, and how we see God, or God sees us, and how we see ourselves through God. Then we can actually understand our value, our worth, because we are very valuable. We are worth a lot more than what we seem to think of ourselves. And you know, sociology defines value as a desirable conviction or a belief. So really, if you think about it, what is your value? How do you see yourself? And like I said, last week I kind of touched base on that a little bit on the message. And I want us to understand today is what are we really going for in our lives? What's going on? But before I get all into that, Memorial Day is a U.S. federal holiday wherein the men and women who died while serving in the United States Armed Forces are remembered. The holiday, which is celebrated every year on the final Monday of May, was formerly known as Decoration Day, and originated after the American Civil War commemorate excuse me, the Civil War. By the 20th century, Memorial Day had been extended to honor all Americans who have died while in the military service. And we thank you for that. And what I want to really touch base on today is yes, it is Memorial Day, and sometimes we tend to forget what they actually did for us. We live in a world that or a country that we live in because of their sacrifices, because of their ability to overcome their fears and their doubts and all the things just to serve for us, because they knew what the outcome, what it would help us. And I want to try and coincide this into us as Christians, us as our belief. And going back to the story of Sergeant White, he received a Medal of Honor on May 13, 2014. If you read his story, that day in 2007, they had been ambushed, his company. A few were hit, some escaped gunfire, but still trapped. 2 lying wounded. Sergeant White retrieved one and administered first aid. And then he retrieved the second, going back and forth. But there was numerous times that he had to go back and forth to get the ones that were wounded and the ones. And when I read this a couple years ago, and then I ministered a couple years ago, and then when I reread this and I really thought about this, I thought, you know, he went and pulled them out, and then he would wait, and then he would go and get another, and then he would pull them out. The whole time doing this, he thought he was going to die. The only thing that he could think of was, I'm going to die. But yet he continually did it. He went back and forth and back and forth. And on that day, only 6 died, including the first one that he retrieved. But he saved many. And like I said, the entire time that he was doing this, he thought of himself that he was going to die. And he was actually quoted as saying, it's just a matter of time before I'm dead. I figured if that's going to happen, I might as well help someone while I can. You know, we never know the courage
Amen.
that we have until we face something. And I've never been in that situation, so I can never say what I would do. But I do know that our courage and our faith and our strength can touch so many and affect so many other people's lives, that we have to understand, and it goes back to what is our value? What do we believe our value is? What is their value that we want to save them? In Ephesians 6 and 12 says, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rules of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. So as we read the scriptures, the battle that we have is not physical, it is spiritual. Everything that ties us together and everything that we fight against, everything but is spiritual, but it does affect us physically. And we have to understand that it doesn't just affect us spiritually, but there's people out there that it affects also. And what I'm trying to get to is where we read in Romans 15:1, and he says, we that are strong bear the infirmities of the weak. So as Sergeant White did, is he took on the strength of those that were wounded, and he went and took them and he pulled them back. And then he went out and got another and pulled them back. He overcame his fears and his doubts.
Yes.
Just to save them. His courage was because he didn't want any of them to perish. And as I said, I want to relate this story, and I don't want to take anything away from it, or I don't want to lessen what this man did, because it is awesome. But we as Christians, we as servants of the Most High God, have to understand there are ones out there that have fell away, that have been wounded, that have been hurt. And there's some that don't even know God. But what are we doing? Are we hiding in the bushes so we don't get hurt? Or are we going out and pulling them back and going and seeing what we can do to help them? And that's what the Lord has really dealt with me about these last few weeks. And we go back to Galatians 6, 1 and 2. It says, Brethren, if a man be overtaken in a fault, ye which are spiritual restore such in one in the spirit of meekness, considering thyself, lest thou also be tempted. Bear ye one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. And like I said, that's what, on this day in 2007, that's what Sergeant White did, is he took on the burdens of his fellow soldiers, of all those that did it. You know, he had to go back and forth, as I read, and he had to go grab one and pull the other. But he also had to get the radio. He had to go, one of the ones that were hit was, they had the radio. So he had to go get the radio so he could call in an airstrike, so they could bomb it and so they could get out. And so he had to go get, and how do I want to say, in other words, he had to make the call. And when I read that part of the story again, it made me think about sometimes we have to make the call for others. He not only risked his life to save those that were wounded and hurt, but he had to save the others that weren't, the ones that were still there, that were ambushed, that were hiding, that had nowhere else to go. So he knew that he had to get to the phone so he could call in the airstrike so he could save everyone, which he did. And God showed me that in that one little word, that he had to get the phone to call in. Sometimes we have to do that. We have to get on our knees. We have to raise our hands. We have to understand what people need. We have to make the call for them. As we said many a times, there was someone praying for me, and there's still people praying for me, and I thank them daily. They're in that war room. They're in that closet. They're on their knees for me. And we have to remember that. We have to remember those that fight for us every day. We have to remember those that need to be fought for every day. We have to be, as Sergeant White, we have to go out and come back and go out and come back. And we need to restore ourselves through the Word so we can have the strength to go back out. And that's what the Lord has really showed me in this story. And like I said, I don't want to make little of what he did because it was a great honor.
Right.
But the other thing that I want to touch base on this, and sometimes we tend to forget, like I said, is before that day on May 13, 2014, when he received his Medal of Honor, all the people knew about Kyle White was that he is an ex-Army paratrooper, which used his Pell Grant to attend college, and now works for a local bank. Little did they know, excuse me, little did they know that the bracelet he wears, that's the names of the 6 they lost that day. What is their value? Nobody knew who he was until that day. He went to work every day, and he had a little bracelet that had 6 names across it. Nobody knew what they represented. But those were the 6 people that died. The 6 people he couldn't save. He tried, but he couldn't. And that's what God was showing me. And do I have the courage, not in the physical, but do I have the courage to save those that are lost? Do I have the courage, knowing what I'm going to have to face? I may have to face the prevail, the danger, the fear of being made fun of, the fear of things unseen. Do I have that courage? And God really put it on my heart. Do we have that courage? Do we have that to go get the ones that were lost? And when I was preparing this, you know, I thought of when I shared this back in 2014, when I shared this story before. God moved me in my spirit the need to go out and keep going out. Like Kyle did, as he wears the bracelet, as he was a soldier beyond what a soldier really is. And as I said, we have prayer warriors. We have, you know, like the movie that came out, The War Room, and all that. We see that, and it was a great movie. But there are really, truly people that do that every day. And God forgive me, but I'm not one of them. But there are people, And they may not physically wear a bracelet with the names of the people, but they have it embedded in their heart of what they're fighting for daily and daily and daily, and on their knees and with their arms lifted high, praising God and asking God to heal them. And it makes me think of Luke 19:10 when I was reading this, and it says, "For the Son of Man is come to seek and save that which was lost." And again we read in Matthew 10:6 and also Matthew 15:24, it says, "To the lost sheep of Israel," he's going to the lost sheep of Israel. And then in Mark 2:17, and I really like this one, it says, "They that are whole have no need of the physician, but they that are sick." And if we really understand that, and we understand what Christ did for us, and He came, then wouldn't we want to save all those? You know, really, if we really think about the people that have gone to church and been hurt and been abused and been beaten down because of what we so-called religious or so-called Christians have done to people, let's go out and get those. Let's show them their worth. Because until we can show them their worth, they don't know what Christ has done for them. Even though they've heard the little scriptures and they heard what everybody said, but they do not know their worth. They do not know what God has truly in store for them. And not even the ones that have been hurt. What about the ones that are lost, that doesn't know Christ, that has never met Christ? You know what God has really been dealing with me is that we're never going to grow. We're never going to become anything other than what we are right now until we can go out. You know, I used to attend Crossroads, and they had a deal when you left the parking lot. It says that you were entering a mission field. And I used to love that little sign. When you drove out of their parking lot, it says you are entering a mission field, which is so true. Where's God leading us? You know, we have to get to the point to where it does become a burden to us to take on or a blessing to take on the burdens of the others, and we take on their burdens. And when we can ever get to that point, and not for our selfishness, not so I can get rich, not so I can feel good about myself and put myself on a pedestal, but because I know that it is helping that person, that I know that they're going to get better. And yes, that is hard. And yes, we have to have courage to do that. And like I said, I'm not going to keep us much longer, but I just want us to understand, when I related this story of Sergeant White going in and coming back and going in, and then like I said, making the call. He had to get to the radio to make the call, or they all would have perished. We have to do that. We have to make the call for others that can't do it. Can we have the courage to do that? Can we fight through our own pains, our own fears, our own not understanding, that we can help others through that? That is what God has really been dealing with me about. Can I do it? Do I have the courage? Do I have the strength? What will I do for those that are lost? You know, as He told Peter, and I'm going to close with this, I'm going to paraphrase this, but as He asked Peter 3 times, "Do you love me, Peter?" Peter said, "Yes." He says, "Do you love me?" Peter says, "Yes." The 3rd time He asked Peter again, "Do you love me?" And Peter gets angered and says, "You know I love you." And He says, "Go feed my sheep." That's what God's telling us today. Is get the courage to go find the lost house of Israel. Go find those that were wounded. Go find those that were hurt. Go find the ones that were abused in church, that went to church to find God but only found something evil and wrong. And find the ones that don't know Christ. That's what we're here for. You know, we talk so much about drug addictions, and we talk so much about homosexuality, and we talk so much about perversion, and we talk so much about adultery and pornography and all these things. And yes, they're all corrupt in our world. But let us look past all that and say that we see a lost soul that needs to be helped. Can we do that? Can we go past and have the courage to see past that, to say, hey, there's something I can do to help these people? Or do I just want to bash them? Do I want to just talk bad? No, we need to find the love of God in us, that our whole purpose is to get them help, to get help the ones that have the alcoholism, help the ones that have the drug addictions. But we can't do that without having the courage to show them what Christ is all about. Not what we think religion is, not what we think this is or that is, or what we're the only ones going to heaven kind of thing, but let's get to the point to where we see past that and we have the courage to go out and to come back and go out and make that final call. And like I said, in closing with all that, I want us to remember the ones that do pray and are, let's not forget, I guess is what God is really trying to show me is, let's not forget where we were, who we were, what we did. So when we see someone that needs that help, we can remember where we were. And thank God someone was on their knee. Thank God someone was raising their hands. Thank God somebody did say, hey, I'm going to pray till Timmy gets to the place that he's supposed to be at. That's where we have to have the courage to do what needs to be done. Like I said last week, we need to see what God sees in us, not who other people think we are. We need to see in other people not what we think they are or what other people think, but what God sees us as. And like I said, I'm going to close with that. And if you have any prayer or anything, come up. But just remember those that did die for us. And remember those that lived for us, what they did also. And we can only imagine what God can do for us if we just step out in faith and go to the lost sheep of Israel. Go to those that are sick, that need a physician. Let us be that person. Let me be that person. Let you become that person to where we do want and do have the courage to step out and do what God wants. And that's all I have. Thank you. Y'all have a blessed day. Thanks to all the soldiers. In Jesus' name.